I want you to invite Gabby Rios one day to this podcast because she was my student. She came from Guanajuato, Mexico. She didn't know the difference between a capital and a lowercase. And Gabby has now sat with Kamala Harris in the White House, advocating for us on education. She's a director. She runs this big program called Parent Institute for Quality Education. And I'm so proud of Gabby. And let me tell you how terrible the bullying is, even in adults. Gabby got invited to Modesto Junior College, which is our community college, to speak about her life. They were doing an Empowering People series, and she invited me to come. You know, after she shares her story and everything she's doing for the community, at the Q&A, this young lady says, "Has anybody ever said anything about your heavy Mexican accent?" And I raised my hand, Gene, and I said, "Gabby, let me answer that." And I said, "What good is a perfect Anglo-Saxon accent if you're doing nothing for the community or the world?"
I've been looking forward to this opportunity. Honored to have you and talk with you here because you are one of my favorite humans walking the earth.
Oh, thank you, Gene. Thank you so much for that. You for the opportunity to be with you and to be able to share. I believe that, we are in life with our goods and our bads to make the world a better place for others.
That is pretty much your statement of who you are. I think that just describes you so well, Maria, because you really have a great way of making other people feel important.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear that.
When I do these podcasts, I'm doing my best to invite people who just are trying to do their best in different ways that are so worthy of imitation.
We need to learn from each other because we have more in common than we have differences. I know that I love learning from other people. I love growing. I love biographies and autobiographies and life stories. I fall like everybody else. I fall, I fail, I make mistakes, but I feel that I'm okay when I hear somebody else has too. We can lift each other up. My mom taught me when I was young that you didn't only have to learn from your own mistake, that you could also learn from the mistakes of others, right? How great is it if we can get, especially our young people, to tune in and to really look at the mistakes that we, the grownups, have made so that they can make a better life for themselves. And also that when you do make a mistake, to sit down and use it as a lesson. I know I learned somewhere that it wasn't a mistake. It was a life lesson. As an educator, and right now I'm teaching only 7th and 8th grade. I've done 1st grade all the way through junior college. But right now, as I work with these junior hires, they're so afraid to ask and make a mistake or to answer and make a mistake. And I know in the classroom, I tell them, you guys, mistakes are good. That's when we grow and that's where we learn. I don't want you to be scared to make a mistake. Answer, try it. And then if we get it wrong, we fix it. And that's where our learning happens. And I say this for my own self, coming from a family where I was expected never to mess up. I didn't learn the value of a mistake. And I'm not talking about doing the same thing over and over, okay? Because I always teach the kids, what is the definition of badness? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Get up, analyze your mess up, look at it and say, what did I do right and what did I do wrong? And what can I do better next time? We have a little girl, she's not that little anymore, she's 14 years old. And I always told her, since she was very young, I would teach her, I said, Mama, when people criticize you, don't get defensive. You take it to the table. In my case, I'm a woman of faith. I take it to God, right? And I'm like, well, so-and-so said this about me. What do you say? And I look at myself and I say, okay, if they're wrong, we throw it in the trash. Nothing has happened. No need to get defensive or offended. But if they're right, they're giving me the opportunity to become a better person, G. I have that opportunity to look at it in humbleness, but I think many people are afraid to fess up and say, I screwed up. I did wrong. You're able to grow and be a better person. And it's okay because, when you think, well, I'm imperfect. Well, yeah, honey, welcome to the world. That's what we humans are. There's no perfection in the human being. That's not a human trait.
How do you determine what feedback to throw in the trash?
In my case, it's always finding the root. Why did I mess up? Why? Did I move in fear? Did I move in pride? Did I move in anger? Or was I just tired? I'm in my 50s, Gene. Let me tell you, oh, I would never have imagined what this life change, this menopause craziness is. My daughter put it in the perfect way. She goes, Mom, I've come to the conclusion that menopause is old people puberty. And I said, honey, you are so right. So right now for me, my challenges is like, okay, I need to calm down and I need to find out where I'm coming from. Okay. And lately, and I'm being very candid here, am I moving out of my menopause? Am I not taking the time to breathe and count to five? I'm a writer, but even if I wasn't a writer, I would invite everybody to journal because in journaling, you get to know yourself. You know, we have so many angry young people right now and adults too, but a lot of young people that are supposed to be happy or young kids that are supposed to just be out playing ball, having fun, playing with dirt, looking at rocks, all those great things you do as you're growing up. And so I've been teaching a lot of the kids, if you're really angry and you want to say a lot of mean things, grab a piece of paper, write it all down to the person in the paper, read it, and then tear it up. And this cost me a lot of years. I didn't learn this right away, Gene. So it's very important for me to teach it to the young people. Don't repeat mistakes we've already made. You're going to make enough of your own. You don't need extras, you know? Even in adults right now, we don't know who we are. And they're telling us who we are. And who's them? The social media, okay? The entertainment world. They're telling us who we are. Or even this thing with the American dream. I don't know if you've seen the documentary of The Minimalist, but you recommend it on Netflix and it's on YouTube too. These two guys, he says, I realized the American dream was not my dream.
Mhm.
I believe, and the Uncle Sam little phrase, be all that you can be. Oh, that little phrase and that poster, and it's like, I can still see it today where I would see it in my junior high. I believe we need to be all that we can be. But being all that you can be, Gene, is not monetary and it's not awards and it's not accolades and it's not, oh, because you have a degree in this and a degree in that, which is what more in the professional world they try to sell you. But being all that you can be, I think it's like, am I giving my best at everything I do? I was telling my students the other day, if you don't know who you are, the world is going to decide for you.
Right.
So we need to get on this and we need to know who we are. We need to know what makes us mad, what makes us sad. You know, in my book, I give them opportunity. I put pages there for people to write to get to know themselves. It's like, what makes you happy? What makes you sad? What makes you angry? What excites you? Like really getting to know who you are. Because for many years, I think I just functioned. I just did what I was told to do. I had all this inside me about writing and producing. And let me tell you, I was a little girl living in a garage, telling everybody at school that someday I was going to study in Hollywood and someday I was going to be on TV. And when I did some local TV, it was so cute because one of my friend's moms called me and she said, Ana Maria, we're calling you to tell you that we're watching you on TV. And mom wanted us to tell you she remembers the day you told her. One day you're going to turn on the TV and I'm going to be right there.
Season 3 of the VanRocha Podcast is sponsored by Allomia Health. Did you know it can take 3 to 6 months for a patient to get their first appointment with a psychiatrist or a therapist? That's a very long wait. The AI mental health chatbot by Allomia is available 24/7 and immediate. Why not test drive Allomia at allomia.com? That's ELOMIA. See the future of AI for great mental health today. And now we'll get back to the episode.
Going into your book, un poquito de everything.
Un poquito de everything, a little bit of todo.
Yeah, I love that title and, you know, what you say about it in the preface of like how you're a mixture. Part of this interview is going to be in Spanglish and I can go back and forth too. And I just love the Latino culture, but it's like you say about yourself that you're like one foot in both cultures. How is that? Because you're fully Mexicana, but like, what do you mean that you're like partially part of different cultures? Explain that.
Well, I thought for many years I was fully Mexicana, but I'm not because I was born in the United States and I lived here. My first time in the same school, like I started school and left school the first time, it was my freshman year in college. So from preschool to 12th grade, I lived in Mexico 6 months and I lived in California for 6 months. And so I really thought of myself more as a Mexican. My dad died when I was 1, and my mom remarried when I was around 8 or 9. And my parents were from the same town, my stepdad and my mom. I went to school in the United States, but I went home to live in Mexico. Whether we were in California or in Mexico, in my home, you lived as a Mexican. You ate like a Mexican. You listened to the radio and TV like a Mexican. Your culture was Mexican. Your faith was Mexican. So I just really thought for a long time, I'm not like Anglo enough for an Anglo, but I'm not Mexican enough for a Mexican. And I felt so lost for so long. And that's when I understood, well, because I'm a mixture. And it's true because look at us. We want to have French fries with carne asada and salsa. And you come down, on Thanksgiving and you'll see us having turkey with rice and chile and tortillas instead of bread.
You blew my mind what you had written about putting ranch on pupusas, girl.
Yeah, because we discovered ranch and we want to put it on everything, you know. But then, get this, Jean, but then I go to Mexico, the backyard, we had a pig, we had chickens, we had a goat, we had a horse. We were planting corn, beans, and squash with grandpa and pumpkins. And I was walking to school and I was seeing kids that had no shoes. And I was seeing kids that didn't have money for lunch at school. It was like a whole different life. And here in the United States, I was the poor kid that lived in a garage. But this is going to make you laugh, but it's so true. But in Mexico, I was the rich kid because I could afford white bread. It's those two worlds that collide and come together to create a more beautiful one. And now that I have Chinese friends, Salvadorian friends, African friends, Italian friends, French friends, and I can eat all the different kinds of food, and Russian friends, Afghan friends. I had a lot of Afghan students and I love my Afghan students. I try to learn some of their words and culture so that when I'm teaching, I can make reference and they can feel part of my classroom. We're talking about story elements the other day. It's so cute. I have to remind you, I have a lot of minority students, okay? My students are all minorities, and they're mostly those facing the most at-risk kids, right? And I said, what are elements? Elements are parts. And I said, it's like the parts of a taco. You have to have a tortilla, and you have to have some meat or at least beans to put in it, some salsa. What do you have to have to make a kebab? What do you have to make a pizza? You have to have bread. You have to have cheese and sauce. And they're like, oh, and they get it. For some reason, the kids always get when my analogies have to do with food. and, and it's so beautiful to make everybody feel a part of and to learn from each other.
Bring it to the people on their level.
Well, I think that, one of the things about my book that I wanted to be, and I told Dr. Francisco Jimenez, who I am so grateful to, not just, because he wrote the foreword on my book, but because of the human being that he is. And I recommend all his novels and books to everybody. I owe him so much. But like I told him, Professor, this is not a book for the deans and the universities. I said, I'm writing for the people.
Mm-hmm.
Because we already have enough very academic, hard to read literature. When our country, 4 out of 5 people in the United States leave 3rd grade not knowing how to read at level.
Right.
So why are we producing this? To me, that's discrimination. So only the elite, you're only going to write for the elite? No, I want to write in the language of the people, the majority, so that they too can dream. They too can find their talent. And no matter what we've done, you can always get up. You can always get up and turn it around and start walking the right way. Get up, make a turn, 180. Go the other way.
And Anuela, you're reminding me, because I've known you now for a few years, weren't you the author of a post that talked about how illiteracy led to incarceration?
Yes. There is a correlation. Let me tell you. So there was a study done. I was working with a librarian. We invented the magic reading carpet and we asked permission at the flea market. And we would go read to the kids at the flea market because we're the lowest reading kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we would make a carpet and blankets. There's this beautiful group of people here called the Friends of the Stanislaus County Library. They gifted us a bunch of books. Consulado Mexicano gifted me a bunch of books. So we would give out free books, but we would also read to the kids. there were adults and my daughter was helping us read to the kids. She had a wide opening experience because she was reading to a little girl her same age and she goes, Mom, she didn't know how to read. She couldn't say the words. And I said, you see me, huh? We did that after I learned and did the research on this with my friend Olga Castañeda, the librarian. And she taught me that the jails look at the third grade levels of a city to know how many jail cells they will need for that generation, because there's a direct correlation between the people that can't read and the people who end up in jail.
And why is that? Because you brought that out in detail last year, I think. But what was the conclusion you came to? Obviously, you can't read in limited opportunities.
I think a phrase that is not mine, and I don't know the author, and I don't want to take credit ever for something that's not mine, will sum it up the best. Because he who doesn't read is obligated to believe what he is told. I want you to invite Gabby Rios one day to this podcast because she was my student. She came from Guanajuato, Mexico. She didn't know the difference between a capital and a lowercase. And Gabby has now sat with Kamala Harris in the White House,
What?
advocating for us on education. She's a director. She runs this big program called Parent Institute for Quality Education. And I'm so proud of Gabby. And let me tell you how terrible the bullying is, even in adults. Gabby got invited to Modesto Junior College, which is our community college, to speak about her life. They were doing an Empowering People series. And she invited me to come. After she shares her story and everything she's doing for the community, at the Q&A, this young lady says, has anybody ever said anything about your heavy Mexican accent? And I raised my hand, Gina, and I said, Gabby, let me answer that. And I said, what good is a perfect Anglo-Saxon accent if you're doing nothing for the community or the world? Period.
Mic drop. And then what happened?
Everybody applauded.
And now, a brief message from our sponsor, Allomia Health. Here's one of their co-founders, Nick Manzik.
We're building Allomia because we care about people and their mental health. You see those stats that pop up on news. You see them on article headlines. Mental health is declining. Social media is the issue. COVID was the issue. Debt, stress. The world is becoming a little more disconnected. At least that's what we're being told. We're not trying to replace therapists. We're trying to just give people another resource to work on their mental health. If we can be part of someone's mental health journey and help them start it or dive deeper or even get to a much better place, that's our goal.
Nick, thank you so much for that description of what Allomia does. Again, that's Allomia Health at allomia.com. ELOMIA. Now let's return to our conversation.
If everybody goes to college, who's going to be our plumber? Who's going to be our electrician? Especially this goes for all the professionals and those who sometimes lose their family trying to get ahead. Some people are very happy as a butcher. Some people are very happy as a plumber, and they have a beautiful family they come to, and they have a home. And you know what I mean? You can have a mansion and not have a home.
Yeah.
Let's come back, people. Let's ground ourselves. Nobody can take away from you what is meant for you. And I lived that. I can say that as a living testimony. That little girl getting beat up, that little girl without a father in that garage, okay, with a mom who barely made ends meet, that traveled to Mexico and California every single year. That little girl was sure she was going to make a movie. She was sure she was going to be a writer. She was sure she was going to study in Hollywood. And everything that I had dreamed of came true better than I dreamed it. Even better. Because, I studied at the Adler, and there's only two Adlers, New York and one on Hollywood Boulevard, the Stella Adler Academy of Acting. And Salma Hayek went there. Jackie Garrido, Benicio del Toro, Jack Ritter. Mark Ruffalo went to that school. Big names. Antonio Banderas. Oh, my English. See? Antonio Banderas. He came out. Before I knew it, I was getting a degree in English with a minor in Spanish and a minor in ESL. My BA is in English, but my master's is in Spanish because, you talked about my poem Until Then. It's so much more beautiful in Espanol. Don't be mad at me, but it's say things in Spanish that you cannot say in English. Even when you read a business letter in Spanish, it's so poetic.
Yes. Yeah. You know, what's the thing, Ana Maria? My personality when I speak Spanish is different.
Right?
Like,
I
I'm,
believe that.
I'm much nicer in Spanish than I am in English.
My daughter says that when I hang around with my Colombian friends, I start speaking with a Colombian accent, and I probably do. I'm very chameleon. I accommodate. And I went to the University of Texas. I always tell my students, I studied in Texas. And when I got there, you know what? When I got there, I said, I'm like from California. I like totally don't like country music. But when I left Texas, I was loving country music. I was like, let's go, girl.
Wait a minute. I think 3 other people just joined this conversation.
There's a country song that says they took her out of Texas, but they couldn't take the Texas out of her. Or they took me out of Mexico, but they couldn't take the Mexico out of me. No, but it's funny because when I was little and we were being discriminated in junior high, and there was a kid that used to tell us, go back to Mexico, go back to your country. And I was like, but I was born in Modesto. That's my country.
Oh, no. That's amazing.
And guess what? We would go to Mexico. I kid you not. My mom had bought my grandma a 12-inch TV, and it was only black and white. Grandma would let me watch my shows when there was no boxing, because my grandma was a boxing fan, and we were watching El Macho Camacho way, way before Oscar de la Hoya. Grandma was a big boxing fan. It was so funny because here you have this old lady, never leaves her house. She doesn't visit anybody. She's a woman of her house, always just tending to her chickens and her garden and her cleaning. But she loved boxing. It was so crazy to me. When I was not even a mother, when I was a high school teacher, I used to write for a local newspaper. Era en español. Se llamaba Notas de la Maestra Ana María. Notes from Teacher Ana María. I wrote one called The Second Birth because I was seeing too many of our kids go through puberty without any help. When your children are born, you teach them how to hold the bottle, you teach them how to walk, how to crawl, how to sit, everything you're teaching them. But all of a sudden you see the kids being more independent in these little things, and you forget that they just entered their second birth, which is teenage life. Nobody has taught them how to be a friend. Nobody has taught them why their body's feeling and why these changes are happening. Nobody's taught them, how do you act when you like someone or when someone likes you? We can't abandon our children, Jean. We got to teach them by talking, by sharing our stories. Be a parent at the second birth. At the third birth, never forget the story of one of my cousins who came and he said that he wanted to leave his wife, and his parents, my tios, they're like, oh, no, señor. Usted se quiso casar. You wanted to marry, and you're going to be a man of your word, and you're going to go march back in that home, and you're going to fix the things you need to fix for your family.
Very good counsel.
We teach more with our actions than with our words.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned that from Gandhi. You must be the change you want to see in the world. That's one of my favorite quotes. That's one of my live by quotes. For those who get offended easily, I want to share this. Recently, I learned from this Mexican psychologist. She was saying, in Espanol, we say, me gritó, me insultó, right? He insulted me. He yelled at me. And she said, take off the me. He yelled. He insulted. So it's not about you. That person is acting that way. I wish somebody would have taught me when I was being told that I was ugly and to go back to my country, that I could have said, hey, that's an opinion, not a fact.
Oh my goodness. Listening to you, it's like, it takes me back to my childhood because you have your Mexican culture deeply ingrained, but you're like so intertwined with Americana.
Yep. Te digo, amigo, te digo. Eat French fries con carne asada. Hey, but then now intertwined with my other cultures, what do you think of birria ramen? Have you got it down where you live?
No.
Yeah, they fuse the birria. And, we have quesabirrias, which is this really good meat stew that we make in Mexico. And they did it with ramen. They're throwing it into the ramen with it's so amazing. You guys have to have it. No, you run into something where you really know that I'm not a true American, which I don't like to say American, estadounidense, because, Mexico is in America. And I told the kids that, don't you be saying los americanos. Mexicanos are americanos. Latinoamérica is South America. Todos somos americanos. Where I really, really struggle is with the THs. And I said, you have to learn lots of words because if you can't say thumbtacks, you say push pins. And so, see, for me to say thumbtacks, it takes so much brain work and so much of my muscles in my mouth to get it to sound without a Mexican accent, or else, like I'm going to go cash a check. No, I'm going to go cash a check. But I wish you could see me on video, how much I have to work to say I'm going to go cash a check.
That is the point, too, that people don't understand, is that language basically is muscles in the tongue. The muscles are stronger doing certain sounds, but then people get all offended.
Allow me to teach it the way I tell the kids. It's the gymnastics of your mouth. If you learn gymnastics when you're a little kid, you can twist and turn your body and put your legs on top of your head any way you want. But if you learn as an adult, you're not as flexible. Same thing happens in the gymnastics of the mouth. It's because we didn't learn as children. Only in the United States, they say children are going to get confused, because in Europe, children speak 4 or 5 languages. They don't get confused. They learn you're supposed to play all kinds of languages for the kids. And you want to do this with the kids, they're not going to get confused. If you have those Disney movies that come in a bunch of languages, play them in all the languages for the kids.
Right. You simplify these complex thoughts, Maria, and you do it in ways that break through prejudices. Incredible. You just talk like somebody who's going to have their own organization of teaching techniques. And you're already, teaching in an organized way, but I just see you as like a Maria Montessori.
Thank you for that, because actually I read about Maria Montessori and she definitely impacted my teaching. And like I told Marta Niño, I'm not a teacher, I'm a talent scout. I just happen to be scouting while teaching some English and Spanish.
So what is this talent scout? What is she looking for?
For the talent in every child, to help them discover the talent in themselves.
Well, that's your mission statement for your organization.
Yeah. Empowering you actually is a phrase I have for my little company, to be empowering you, because that's what I'm about. I learned that nobody can take away from you what is meant for you. If you don't believe in God, take out the God factor. But if you believe in God, nobody can take away from you what God meant for you before you were even formed in the womb of your mother. Nobody. And if you walk in life in fear, or if you walk in jealousy, it debilitates you. It handicaps you from being all that you can be.
Yeah.
You have to be happy for other people's wins. You have to be happy for other people getting ahead. A true leader brings out the best in their staff. A fake leader is a dictator.
You know what? I always get the sense of where it's time to drop the bomb and basically wrap it up. You just dropped the bomb.
Thank you.
Ana Maria, you are incredible. It's just like I have been on a educational, entertaining journey with you.
I thank you for having me, Jean. I just really hope that all my wins and my losses can serve other people, not just myself. I always had that dream as a younger girl that all my pain would serve as something good, especially in us in the minorities and those who suffered, low socioeconomic status. Many of us endured abuse. And I want to say to those people, and if you allow me, wrap it up with this: your parents did the best they could with what they had. They loved you the best that they could love you. It wasn't about you. There was nothing you did wrong. It was their own hurt. It was their own lack of resources and the ignorance that they didn't plan on, but that they had to endure, that didn't allow them to give you the best. But we're a new generation, you guys. We have Google, we have AI, we have YouTube. We can learn to be good parents, good friends, good neighbors. I mean, you look it up, everything 101, but it's not about you. You are a wonderful, valuable, extraordinary, talented human being. And if you are 13, 24, or 89, you still have a lot to give.